economic development miracle, China. Have you been in China before? Have you heard any story or news about China? You know what? I used to have a Japanese student, and she told me a very interesting story. She was a TV lover. She loved to watch TV programs in Japan, and she had a lot of interest in China. And she told me that when she watched the program of tourists, she found China is really a lovely country. Delicious food, beautiful view sites, a lot of historic sites. Wow, she really wanted to come to China. But when she turned to the channel of news, pollution, poison food, and all kinds like that, she confused. Is that the same country? Finally, she decided to come to China by herself, to see with her own eyes, to hear with her own ears, and to think with her own brain. How about you? Do you have similar experience? Well, today, I will give you a summary review of China's economic development, and then let's analyze some key elements of this growth, this development. Well, let's start. And after you attend this lecture, whether your thoughts, your image about China have been influenced or not. Let's see. Okay, at the beginning, I'd like to ask you a question. Although I took the economic development miracle as the name of this lecture, still, I'd like to ask you, the first question is China's economic development a miracle or not? And that's the first step I ask you to think. Well, you know, it's social science, not like nature science, which always generally has the unique, the only one answer. In social science, with different perspective, you may have a different conclusion. So it's an open question. Think about that. What's your answer? Do you think China's economic development a miracle or not? And after the lecture, I will ask you again this question to see whether you changed your mind or not. Well, at the beginning, let's have a look of China's economic development situation. The second question I'd like to ask you is, do you know China's economy is the largest or the second largest in the world? If we consider the amount of GDP, the ranking of the GDP in the world, do you think China has the largest economy or the second largest? Do you know the answer? Let's see how much you know about China. Yes, second largest at present. Who has the largest economy in the world, do you know? US, yes, United States of America. Well, China has the second largest economy in the world. And I think you know that China has a large population. So when we calculate the per capita GDP, do you know the ranking of China? First place to second, fifth place, or 26th to 50th, 51st to 75th, or 76th to 100? Do you know the answer? Just guess. The second largest economy in the world with the largest population. How about the ranking of per capita GDP, which shows the health of common people? Do you know the answer? Just guess. In this category. Okay, let's make a summary. The People's Republic of China is the world's second largest economy after the United States. It's the world's fastest growing major economy with average growth rate of 10% for the past 30 years. And I think when some students thought China's economic growth is a miracle, they may know these facts. Such a large country with such a rapid growth of economy for such a long term. China is also the largest exporter and second largest importer of goods in the world. China became the world's top manufacturer in 2011. That's the reason why I'm sure that in your country, you can definitely find some products which made in China. China became the world's top manufacturer in 2011, surpassing the United States. And the country's per capita GDP is more than 9,000 US dollar. And in 2008, it's ranking in the world 72nd in the world. Well, then let's have a historical review of China's economic growth. Here another question. Although I cannot ask you face to face, I cannot hear your answer, I still appreciate that you can answer this question when facing the screen. Was there economic growth before the Second World War in China? What do you think? Well, the answer is yes. However, such economic growth was not all around China, just in certain regions. China's economy experienced modest but significant growth in the decade period to the outbreak of full-scale war with Japan in 1937. The war against Japan had broken in 1931. Well, the full-scale war started in 1937. Since 1937, the war broke all around China. And the pattern of pre-World War II economic advance reflected China's openness to international trade and investment. Pre-war expansion clustered around two growth routes, the Yangtze Delta area centered on Shanghai and the northeastern provinces. So there was modest economic growth, not all around China, but only in some certain region. Well, here showed the map of these two regions and the photos at them. If you have chance to visit China, I think you will have in the near future or in future. Be sure to visit the Bund in Shanghai. And most of the buildings on the Bund built at the beginning of the 19th. And or the northeastern province. And the signs there showed this modest economic growth before the World War II. And then, during the World War II, and after that, the Civil War, there was no economic growth at all. It's easy to understand that, right? Okay. The economy was heavily disrupted by the war against Japan and the Chinese Civil War from 1931 to 1949. And after the Civil War, China's Communist Party set up the new government, the People's Republic of China. And this anti-Japanese war was an important part of the Second World War. It defeated Japan. It took the longest time, the greatest price, restrained and animated the Japanese army the most. And from 1945 to 1949, it was the Civil War. China's Communist Party of China won it and founded the People's Republic of China in 1949. And why China's Communist Party of China won this war? In fact, it's not only a political issue, but also related to the social structure and economic structure at then. At then, the majority of the population were farmers, or we can call peasants, and workers. And the Communist Party just represented the benefit of these two groups. And the working class at then mastered the advanced industrial production technology, and the innovator and practitioner of the productive forces of the time. And the workers had highly disciplined and organized. Before the foundation of People's Republic of China, how about the situation of the economy, which was the basis of the new China? Here I raised a case to show the economic situation before the foundation. There was a more and more serious economic collapse and inflation. Here's the story. Under the governance of the old government of Kuomintang government, what could be bought with 100 yuan? Well, in 1937, you could buy 2 oxes with this 100 yuan. But 1 year later, 100 yuan, you could only buy 1 ox. And 1 year later, a pig. And in 1948, 1949, before the foundation of the People's Republic of China, with 100 yuan, you could buy nothing. Well, it showed how serious the economic inflation was. Okay, based on such situation, new government, New China, was set up. The New China moved to create an economic system largely modeled after Soviet experience. Civil advisor and civil trained specialists worked to establish new institutions organized around annual and 5-year plans. Well, this economic system had several characteristics. For example, the extensive state ownership. There was almost no private ownership. Properties owned by the state or the collective. And there was a central control over prices. Factories or companies couldn't decide the price of their products. The government decided the price. And the material balance plan. Not only the products, but also material resource. The price of the material, the resource, decided by the government. Let's have an example. A factory under the planned economy. This factory couldn't decide the price of its product. In the same time, he couldn't decide how much material it could get, and what was the price of this material. So all the production process decided by the government. And issued specific directive governing the allocation of major inputs, products, and financial flows. Okay, inputs, products, financial flows, prices, all this governed by the government. Well, not only the production sector, but also the consumption, also decided by the government. How much a family could consume the food, daily necessities, all this was decided by the government. By what? By such coupons. Before the reform and opening up policy, if you wanted to buy any food, you needed not only money, but also such coupons. Well, only the urban residents had the coupon. Rural residents hadn't. Remember this fact, this historic fact. It may help you to understand the difference of the rural and the urban nowadays in China. Although now we hadn't such coupon anymore. Is there difference between the rural and the urban? That's a question for you, and you can think about it. Well, as we mentioned, the planned economy, everything, prices, financial flow, products, input, all of this decided by the government. Think about that. Even with the help of the most advanced computer of nowadays, it is a big task to calculate the most suitable material flow, financial flow, prices. Well, before the reform, there was no such technology at all. All this done by hand, by human being. You can imagine how inefficient this system was. Therefore, there were many failures of this planned system. The food scarcity in village and city resulted from the low efficiency of the agriculture industry. Inefficient industry associated with this Soviet-style central planning, because it's really a tough task. It's really inefficient. And there was an undevelopment of the services. At then, the government thought to make this country wealthy, we should produce more instead of consumption. If we reduce the consumption, the country would become wealthier and wealthier. That's the background of the reason why there was underdevelopment of services. And at then, China was isolated from the international economy. Well, in fact, that's not only the situation of China, but the situation of many countries in 1960s, 1970s. At then, that's the time of the Cold War, and the whole world was separated into two parts. One led by Soviet Union and another led by the US. And substantial difference between the rural and the urban sector. As I mentioned, the coupon issue. Therefore, you can imagine that. At then, it was difficult for people to move to other cities, other places. Why? If you were a farmer, you hadn't a coupon in city, how could you survive when you couldn't buy any food? So, as only urban residents had the coupon, rural hadn't. Therefore, the planned system must be changed, as there were so many failures. There were so many failures. So, what's the reform and opening up policy? And what these policies have changed? What about the process of the reform and opening up policy? All of this will help you to answer the question at the beginning of this lecture, whether China's economic growth, China's economic development, a miracle. We will discuss that moment later.